Good evening and welcome to yet another edition of Law and Order, brought to you exclusively by Channel I. Tonight we carry on from last week when we started on this topic of the protection of the child and the rights that are afforded children in Sri Lanka through the law. Joining us once again tonight is Ms. Milani Salpiti-Korala, who is a colleague at the bar and a good friend, who is the Executive Director and founder of the Child Protection Force. She is involved extensively in court cases which involve children, whether the child is a victim of crime or is in need of the protection of the law due to being connected to a crime, whether it be a named child offender or someone who is a victim of the crime. And to carry on from last week where we touched on the Children and Young Persons Ordinance, I would like to once again invite Milani to just, for the benefit of those who could not join us last week, could you just by way of a summary tell us what this act affords us?
Yes. So we discussed the three types of children who come under the Children and Young Persons Ordinance, which is victims of crime, children who have committed an offence and who have been named as child offenders, and children who need care and protection. So care and protection, also victims of crime may also need care and protection,
Yes.
but there may be children who need care and protection who are not victims of crime. Right. So these are the three categories, and once these cases are filed in court, one of the special provisions I'd like to stress upon is the fit person order, where if you feel, I mean it may be a neighbor's child, it may be your sister's child, if you feel that this child is in need of care and protection, you can appear in court and apply to be a fit person to take care of the child until the case is concluded or until the court decides that this child can go back to the parents or be fully adopted, or on those lines. So those are the main things that we spoke about last time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, Milani, could you just also let us know if there are any international conventions that Sri Lanka is signatory to,
Yes.
which make it mandatory for Sri Lanka to take greater responsibility for our children, and in that sense we are responsible to the international community as well.
Definitely. So Sri Lanka signed the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1990. This was ratified in 1991. So since then we are in operation under the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child.
Right.
And there are extensive load of rights that are listed in this convention. And we as a signatory state, we are under obligation to make sure that these provisions are available and implemented for the children of Sri Lanka. And also so there is a commission which comes under the convention. Yes. So every state party has to send a report on this, on how we have tried our best to implement convention rights in our country.
I see. How often does that have to
So
happen?
ideally it has to happen every 5 years.
I see.
The first 2 years after we ratified, within the first second year, and then every 5 years.
I see.
And it is very the convention itself says that this report is for recommendation. So we would say we have implemented these laws, but we are having trouble with some of this.
I see.
What would the commission recommend for us to do?
Okay.
So it's kind of like asking for advice.
Okay. Right. Right.
Right. So there is also a government report that is sent once in 5 years, and a shadow report done by civil society organizations.
Okay.
So these reports will have on how the convention laws are implemented in Sri Lanka.
I see. That's quite heartening, because it's
Yes.
important to note that we Sri Lankans are responsible to the international community
Correct.
for the protection of our children.
And when you read the convention, I mean, it touches on everything. One really interesting point for what I saw is the state's responsibility to strengthen the family.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So I had my guru who passed away, Sajiva Samaranayaka, amazing human. So he used to always carry about these two little houses made out of Lego. One little house had a good foundation, and the other one didn't. It was just the walls and the roof. So he used to pass it around and say, okay, tell me which one is the stronger one, the one with the foundation. And he said, he used to say, so the house that doesn't have the foundation, the family that is not strong, is where the children fall out. You know, I'm even getting goosebumps because, so, which is true. You know, the best protection of the child is within the family, which is why we stress on the fact that even if you are a single mother, we will help you, we will assist you to be strong so that you can take care of your children on your own. So, that,
So it's also encouraging to note that even the convention recognizes the importance of the family
Yes.
to ensure that the child is protected and is given the best chance at life.
Correct. So it's not a legal problem. It's not new laws with regards to the child. It's already existing mechanisms that we need to implement.
But how would you now we touched on this last week as well, when we're talking about there's an increase in the number of divorce cases that are filed in Sri Lanka. Now that is I mean, if there ever was an example that perhaps the foundation, the institution of the family is I don't know, is being attacked in that sense. And
Yes.
that the institution of family is not given as great an importance or given as great an importance as it was
Yes.
in the past. In such circumstances, how would you ensure that a child is afforded the protection that she or he deserves?
This is the thing. So to me, what I see is, in all these cases that come to me, is mental health awareness, where all of us need it, Mokshini. I mean, you and I
Of
need
course,
it.
yes.
I speak to someone once in 2-3 months when I have too much cases, when I have too much going on.
Because sometimes the stress can get to you.
Definitely.
Yes, I
So this
understand.
is what happens within the families. After a woman has a child, we all know that there is a medical condition where her hormones get topsy-turvy. Okay, I'm not doctor, but that's a known fact.
There can be postnatal depression.
Postnatal depression, which is what, you know, the hormones going crazy becomes postnatal depression.
Yes.
And this itself will make the woman start deteriorating. And then the relationship between the husband and wife becomes toxic, where the bond between the mother and child becomes stronger. Right? But because of this relationship being toxic with the husband, the child gets neglected automatically. So this is where most of the problems are coming to me with regard to divorce. And of course, in real hostile situations, there is domestic violence, right? So this mental health awareness, prenatal pregnancy classes, are these being taught? Do families, both husband and wife, know this?
I don't think that there is enough of awareness given
Exactly.
to this. Yeah, you're right.
So again, knowledge. You know, when they come into the midwife or when they come in for their clinics, talk about postnatal depression, talk about the support of the family with regard to, you know, caring for the baby. And breastfeeding mothers also can get really depressed. That's also a known fact. So just to keep that mother happy, to keep the family going. This is where, and you know, to strengthen the family, I think more than finances, if you keep their psychological state or their, you know, the mental health in a good state, the family becomes happy anyway.
Now, there are instances where, I mean, when it is just impossible for the husband and the wife to continue in the marriage.
Correct.
And their divorce proceedings are necessary.
Correct.
So, just taking from what you just mentioned, in those circumstances when divorce is necessary, am I to take away from what you said that if both parents and the child are given the psychosocial therapy and support that they need, they would be able to navigate those rough waters and be able to overcome the mental trauma that they face as a result of the divorce? Is that what you're saying?
Definitely. I think all children who go through divorce need mental health support. All children need, and both the couples also need it, whether or not they are going to stay in the relationship.
Yes, right.
It's mandatory that they seek mental health, because you'd see the difference of the behavior in children. Once this whole toxicity starts, once these things happen, how the children start behaving will show you exactly how, you know, what is needed. So there are quite a few psychologists, child psychologists who are available in Sri Lanka. There's counseling available where people, but the only thing is there is a, society has built up this taboo
Yes.
of actually seeking help. To me, it's like okay, I have a cold and I need to go and see a doctor.
Sadly, though, there is a stigma attached to seeking the assistance of a professional who is engaged in
Exactly.
therapy. But there is really no shame involved in going and seeking the assistance that you need, because
Yes.
as you said, it's like going and getting medicine for the flu. You
Yes.
speak to someone, it may not necessarily mean that you are prescribed drugs, it just
Yes.
could mean that you need to talk to someone and get the assistance you need. But
I
sadly,
think-
there is a dearth of people seeking that assistance because of the stigma attached to
I
it.
think Sri Lanka, rather the world at large in a whole, needs a raising of consciousness, awareness about the family, mental health and all that.
I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you, Milani. There has been this really interesting act that was introduced to the body of law in Sri Lanka in 2015, which affords victims of crime and witnesses certain protections. Am I right?
Correct.
In your experience or in your work, are you able to use the provisions of that act during your work?
Definitely. So the purpose of this act, initially known as Assistance to and Protection of Victims of Crime and Witnesses Act.
Okay.
And the act also established an authority, right? So it has a separate legal division, it has a separate police division. So the main purpose of this act was to make available to the victims and witnesses their rights and entitlements, how they can use the protection of the state. So for example, when it's a victim of crime, and say before the victim goes into court, there are threats from the side of the accused.
Right.
If you
to intimidate
the victim, right? So at that point, you can immediately contact this authority, the national authority, and give them a written complaint or go and meet them, and they will act on it immediately.
I see.
So I have done this with quite a few of my cases,
I see.
and the authority itself is in Battaramulla, and you can go there, but I always give it in written form, and they have acted immediately. And so far, to me, I have seen that the National Authority for the Protection of Victims of Crime and Witnesses is very efficient.
That's very heartening.
Yes, of course. And so far, I've had really good services provided by them.
What are the services? Sorry for interrupting. What are the services they provide?
Correct. So what they do is, at the point where a victim of crime is in danger and the family is in danger, the authority and the act provides for safe, ideally for safe homes, but the authority doesn't have a safe home yet. It uses the safe home of the ministry, because it's a very new authority, so they're still building up. And it has also a funding mechanism where if the victim, say for example, you have to leave your house, you have to go to an entirely new safe house. So in these situations, if you need money, if you need legal aid, things like that, also there is a fund where they will also help the victim. They will do their own police investigations as well to see, for example, if the police of that area is, well, something has gone wrong, the investigation is not done properly, then you can write to the authority, and the authority will take over the investigation from them, because they have an individual police unit that handles it.
Yeah.
Right. So we have been categorized also as a civil society organization who deals with the most vulnerable victims, who are children.
That is the Child Protection Force where you work.
Yes.
Okay.
So most vulnerable victims are children, and they can easily be threatened, they can easily be intimidated. So at that point is when I start writing to the authority and I work with the authority. Legal aid is something that the authority is also looking for. So on the part of the child, we can assist the authority with that.
Okay. Now, Milani, as a legal practitioner, our system, do you think is geared for children? Let me put it this way. When a child comes into contact with the legal system, is the system designed in such a way that the child's experience in such a circumstance is the most comfortable that can be afforded the child? or does the child undergo further trauma as a result of coming face to face with the legal system?
Unfortunately, as much as I don't want to say it, the child is victimized more and more within the system. I can say that our system is not at all, I mean, courts may be home to you and me, but not to a child who has just been traumatized, you know. So the system itself is very traumatizing for a child, and the delays within the system and the process, you know, you have to go to the police, wait till your complaint is taken off, go to the judicial medical officers, wait till you are examined again and you have to talk about the story again, go somewhere else, wait, you know, that whole waiting process, that whole delay, then your case is called in court, wait for 6 months. So the delay in itself is an entirely new level of secondary victimization.
Now, it's bad enough that the child has already gone through this
Correct.
crime.
Yes.
They also have to now
And the lack of someone who is in it. So, for example, the lack of lawyers who will hold the hand of the child and take the child into all those places and say, don't worry, you know, we are there for you, we will handle it. You just need to come to these places with us. Friend of the child. Ideally to be done by the probation officer, but I don't know whether the workload is so high for the officers as well that they also can't find the time to do it.
I see. So, would it be a safe assessment to say that as lawyers, even lawyers need further training, and even probation officers, on how to provide their services in a manner that would make the child more at ease, put the child more at ease
Yes.
when they are involved in a case?
Yes, so to me, from what I learnt and lessons I learnt as well, to me it was raising my consciousness to be mindful, which I think all of these child sector officers need to do. Because I mean, we're all human, all of us are stressed, we can snap. So to be mindful not to snap when it's a child, because you know it's a child who has gone through trauma. So a lot of lawyers who may want to be trained and who may want to be part of this child rights system, and of course probation officers to be more trained and sensitized to be more mindful with regard to children, and the police officers of course.
Would you know, given your, could you just share with us now, first and foremost, when we first began our the first segment of this series this series, one thing that you flagged at the very outset was that we do have the mechanisms in place and we have the laws in place, but there seems to be a gap between the theoretical side of it, where everything is there on paper, but when it comes to implementation, there seems to be a gap where we don't see the beneficiaries benefiting to the full extent afforded from the law, by the law. Can you give us examples of this, Milani?
Okay, so one of my cases, like I said, the girl who attempted suicide with Panadol, only because the case was being delayed.
Yes.
So that is one. There was another child who came to me who was a child offender, who I even fostered until she became 18. This child only has been done wrong all her life through the system.
Oh, I see.
So because she was a stubborn child, she was beaten up within the homes. In court proceedings, she has never been dealt with nicely. Nobody has been nice to her. At one point, she has been running away so much that she has even been, you know, totally run off out of the homes. Nobody is looking for her, and she has got into drugs and severe drugs, you know, heavy drugs. So these are cases, you know, instances where children have entirely lost hope within the system. I mean, she'd message me every day, even now, and she says, I want to call my case back. I wasn't treated properly. So these are vulnerable victims, children who have never been within a happy family, who have never had love. And there are many children like this. There are 12-year-old children who are pregnant. These cases are not reported. Why? Because they are scared to come out. You know, so we have to make that whole reporting process more friendly. You know, to say that I try to take police officers into workshops that I do for children to say that this uniform is nothing that you need to get scared of. This uniform is there to protect you. You need to come and talk if something happens. So that entire system, juvenile justice is not only the police, the JMOs, the court system mainly, to be more friendly. So there was at one point with Honorable Justice Shirani Tilakawardena where they implemented a yellow filing system, where children's cases are marked in yellow with a yellow stripe, so that it's easily identified as a children's case.
Right.
Some courts practice once a week on a particular day only child related matters are heard.
Right.
So in those instances you can see that steps are taken to actually make it easier for the child. So if these are implemented all throughout Sri Lanka, you know, that will be great. And of course discipline within the sector workers, within the government department workers, to work, to finish a case, to do it on time, to be on time. You know, I think that's something that the whole of Sri Lanka needs as,
I think we as lawyers also need.
Also, yes.
Milani, we don't have too much time, but just to wrap up, since this is the last of our 2 shows, is there anything that you would like our audience to take away from, even if they forget everything that we've discussed during these last 2 shows? Is there something that you would like to place with our audience with regards to children?
Well, yes. I mean, all of us, you don't have to be biological parents, but as adults, we are responsible for Sri Lanka's children. And within the next 25 years, the children now are going to be Sri Lanka, and we are going to be the older community. So if we want to live peacefully and to be loved, then we need to love and nurture our children now, whether they are my biological children or not, you know, and to protect them as a state and to be responsible for that protection to everyone. Well, yeah, that's what I have to say.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that's all we have time for, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm sure that you've all been enlightened, first and foremost, by what mechanisms and laws are in place to afford protection to the children of Sri Lanka. And second, how we as responsible citizens of Sri Lanka can do our part to ensure that children that we come to contact with are protected, and that we also can make use of some of these provisions of the law to ensure that we do the most we can to protect the children who we come in contact with. As I said earlier, it has been nothing but a pleasure to have you on the show. Milani, thank you so much for joining us. I will wind up once again by leaving with you what Nelson Mandela said, that the soul of a country can be determined by how that country treats its children, and it is our hope and prayer that Sri Lanka will protect its children, because Sri Lanka's future is its children. That's all we have time for, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll see you again next time at the same time. Good night.